Good morning. I'm Marty O'Hava. I'm with Hines. We're a property development firm, been in business about 60 years, mainly commercial high-rise space. More recently, we've gotten into the multifamily large project, working with these guys. Ron?
I'm Ron Weber, and yesterday I sort of heard a trend with a lot of trained architects going to the general contractor side. And I just want you all to know that there's still good architects out there. I'm a licensed architect in Chicago, an associate at Papa George James Partners, and we were invited to this project because we are residential experts committed to excellence and a collaborative team effort.
Dave Purdy, project manager at Walsh Construction. Walsh is currently the 13th largest general contractor in the country and been in business for almost a little over 120 years. So.
And I'm Tom Fulda, also with Walsh Construction. I'm the construction technology manager for the job.
Also trained as an architect.
Yeah. Recovering.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the building, not too much, but I want to give you a little bit of background. Wolf Point East Tower is the second building of three buildings that are going to be built on Wolf Point. It's a joint venture between Hines, the developer, and Joseph P. Kennedy. They're the landowner. It was a master development by Pelly Clark Pelly, and these guys are GC and our architect, production architect. The site's a great site. It's right outside the loop of the city of Chicago at the confluence of the rivers. It's a little bit difficult site, but the wonderful thing is that it's unencumbered views. You know, nobody's going to build next to you on the river, so it's a great site. Here's just a couple of shots showing the master plan coming together. The three different buildings are going to look very similar at the bottom. A lot of parks and river walk. There's a beautiful river walk for people to enjoy. A couple more renderings here. This is the front door to our building. You can see the lobby. The other two shots there, I wish we had a little bit better renderings of this, but I wanted to show the different types of ceilings that we have in this building. We've got, of course, a lot of drywall and lay-in in the office spaces, but in the amenities areas, we have aluminum slat ceiling. Some of it is tightly put together, like in the pool area here, where there's very limited access. And then other areas, like our fitness center has, the slat ceilings are spaced out like trellis, which required double levels of sprinklers, which created a lot of additional coordination issues. The building itself is about 65 stories tall. We have nearly 700 units. Most of them are one bedroom. We do have a few two bedrooms up at the top and a lot of studios as well. They're relatively small. It's a city building. They're about 800 square feet each. We got 200 parking spaces, not too many for a building of this size, but it is in an urban area, and most people take trains, Ubers, buses, what have you. I want to tell you a little bit about Hines and our approach. We've been learning about BIM, right? We're a developer, we're learning, and we have recognized that years ago we used to not say anything about BIM. And then more recently we started saying we need some 3D modeling in certain areas of the building, lobbies or mechanical rooms maybe. More recently, now we have like a 15-page document that explains exactly what we want covered, what we don't want covered. And as I'm here at this meeting, I'm learning an awful lot about our document is already pretty archaic and outdated, and that we need to start incorporating the LOAs and the LODs and, you know, the standards. And so we've got a lot of work to do when I get back and start talking to our folks in Houston. We typically try to incorporate a lot of this information into the contracts with our architects and engineers. We go and assemble the team. We hire the architects and the engineers. We have different people that we like for different types of projects. This project specifically was right next to the Chicago River. We had to dig 6 stories down right next to the river, so that had very complicated earth retention systems. We've got an extremely aggressive schedule on this project, and so we knew that we needed BIM on this project. We had to get something to where we could, once we got rolling out there, we had to keep the project going as quickly as we can. There was a presentation just a couple of minutes ago that I like to hear, because one of the things that Hines does in our approach is we as the owner sit in every single one of the collaboration meetings that Tom has. Tom's got his meeting set up on Tuesdays and starts at 8 and goes until it's complete, maybe 11 or 12. But I sit in the meetings. I have a counterpart, Chuck, who is more architectural. I'm a mechanical engineer. But we sit in these meetings, and we believe that being part of the meetings really helps. We understand what the problems are. We understand what the issues are. And on top of that, Ron and his entire team, Ron sits usually on a go-to meeting. So he's there listening, and we'll say, hey, Ron, here's a problem. And so the owner's there, the architect's there, and we've got all of the coordinators there so that we can identify or find the issue that has been brought to us and either figure it out and give them direction right there in the meeting, or go back and we completely understand what the issue is so that we can get a response as quickly as possible. We really want all the RFIs to come in that say, per discussions in the coordination meeting, this is the direction that we are going to take, and then our answer is confirmed. So that's our goal, is that streamline and coordination and collaboration. We want the architect and the owner to be in these meetings. We even bring the structural engineer in, usually, 10 o'clock. We have them on a standing call. They don't have to be dialed into the meeting, but we tell them every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we need your availability so that if we have a problem, we're going to call you so that you completely understand the issue. Sending RFIs in sometimes just takes so long, and somebody doesn't understand the issue, and it has to go back and forth and have all that kind of time wasted. So we're all about trying to streamline through collaboration. One other real quick thing is the submittal party. It's not really a party, but it's another collaborative effort that we put together. At the very beginning of a job, we get the architect and the engineer to sit in a room, and we physically go through each of the submittals page by page, comparing it to the specification. The engineer is there, he's talking to the mechanical contractor, and usually the contractor brings in his vendor. So if we have a chiller or a cooling tower, we can go through, we can talk about the differences between the equipment, and we sit there. Sometimes it can take 4 to a full week, but we knock it all out, and there's nothing that goes back and forth. At the end of the week, the contractors, they can head out of there and release all their equipment. All right, guys, turn it over to you.
So 3 approaches: design, bid, build, design assist, and design build. Design assist is theoretically the middle happy ground, which the owner decided to go with. The one problem we faced was the accountability for the engineers hand off their delivery to the subs, which we'll talk about further on.
Thanks. So I think we could all agree that building a good team is important, and I think Walsh at our company, we really pride ourselves in a collaborative approach. And so obviously subcontractor selection is a huge part of that approach. And it really starts in the pre-construction phase, and initially in the bid phase. And when I say bid, I'm saying before the GC is awarded. So at this point, we have some documents, and we have a couple loose terms like design assist. Well, what does that mean? So we get with Marty, and we really understand what the drawings are, what they expect from design assist, and we kind of get unified. We collaborate, and we kind of have a goal. And then you really get into the meat of it when we get the post award. So once we're selected as a general contractor, we really fine-tune the ownership's buy-in as far as their involvement. Like Marty said, they're very hands-on, which is really great. It's a game changer for us, because if we have a question on what to do, he could simply give us a yes, no, or sometimes, like I said, just he understands the problem, come back and give us the answer later on. So then we know he's there. That kind of eases everyone's problems at that point. And then as far as the bid review, the ownership was also hands-on there. So we'd bring in all the subs, potential MEP subs, and the shortlisted guys, and basically we'd go through and confirm skills. What size team do they have? Experience, give us models, and are they in-house? Different things that kind of give us an idea of who we're getting on the team. And then, ownership would also bring in their questions, and I think we're all kind of able to get a warm and fuzzy on who we want to go with. Obviously, value was important as well. And then from there, we really determined the scope of work. So at that point, we understand what drawings we're getting from the owner, and if there's a model, there was a model that wasn't really complete, but we knew what we had to complete in the model. So from there, we basically tell our subs at this point, we expect you guys to pretty much design assist and complete this project. So I think expectations were set really early on, and everyone understood what the task at hand was. And then we always have our contract exhibit at Walsh. We have an Exhibit J, which defines what what we expect with more data information that Tom is probably more privy on, but really sets the expectations again. One of the cons in our subcontractor selection, I think, was the word design assist. Right, it's a poorly defined term, so trying to figure out, what these guys have to do, where they got to take it from. We really had to spend a lot of time really queuing up with the owner and getting everyone on board. But then again, that's actually also a pro. Because it was design assist, we were able to really start early on and get guys going before they even had a contract. So we're waiting for our contract. We knew what we had to do. Instead of waiting for full completed documents, 100% IFCs, we basically said, all right, hey, here's what we have. Let's start getting moving. So 4 months before these guys had contracts, we were starting to model. So that was a big help for everybody. And then obviously expectations were set very early.
Okay. So the stage has been set at this point. The owner specified a streamlined collaborative process. The architect's on board with design assist as a project delivery method, and the construction company has put together the trade partners and their contracts in a way to achieve those goals. What we sort of struggle with at Walsh and Construction Technology, as a company that does $5 billion worth of work every year, didn't do BIM on any job 10 years ago. We want to do BIM on every job that needs it 10 years from now. How do you turn a very large ship like that without it turning into a disaster? Our healthcare, our national, our federal groups, they've all been early adopters, and they've sort of made the case for the technology in the company. But now that you've got those footholds, how do you expand it to the rest of everyone else at Walsh? And that's sort of what we're struggling with, especially with high-rise, because whenever we had a BIM coordination requirement on a job, we'd always sort of farm it out to a third party. So what we wanted to change with this job was that expectation that BIM is sort of a transaction, something that you buy from a guy, and make it more as a process, a tool we use to solve our internal problems. The second big challenge that we face at Walsh is that in addition to a big ship, we've got a lot of captains on the ship. We've got a very capable pre-construction group. We've got a civil group that does work from coast to coast, building bridges and roads. You probably slowed down for our workers at some point in your life. Our self-performed concrete operation, very hardworking, very talented. And then you also have the market groups like the high-rise group that Dave and I are attached to with those specific program specialties. How do you get all those people to turn the ship together? And we really needed them to do that on this job because of the site logistics challenge. So what my chief of pre-construction did, he did this heroic job of getting everybody to sit down at a table together and start talking to one another. And I owe him a great debt for that because that's not an easy task. And then BIM was sort of introduced then as a way just initially to give visual confirmation to everyone because we had a lot of people using the same words, speaking very different languages. And then just going through this third prong of the strategy was this rapid redraw where we'd meet every morning with all the key stakeholders, look at the site logistics plan, say, oh yeah, that'll never work. We need to improve that. That's too slow. So we'd have that in the mornings. I'd go back to my workstation, update all the drawings, update all the models, come back the next day. Yeah, it still doesn't work. We still need to improve this. We still need to fix that. I go back to my desk and just sort of on a daily basis, we keep pressing through until we finally arrive at a solution. The first problem we were trying to overcome was that the job site there in the gray area you see on the right, as soon as you start excavating, you've cut yourself off from the laydown area in beige on the left. So for our civil group, as they're trying to lay out the earth retention system, which because you're excavating 75 feet immediately adjacent to the full weight of the Chicago River, it's not a small feat of engineering. But because they use bridges to build other bridges all the time, they said, don't worry about it, guys. We'll just bridge the excavation with this trestle bridge. We've got one of them in the yard right now. We can float it on a barge from the Chicago River, get to you at the end of the week if you need it. So they stepped up there. Then our self-performed concrete operation came back, located the crane, identified the best place to tie into these new foundations as well, and then worked with the civil teams for his plan locations for all these rakers, where they're going through the core and where they absolutely couldn't, as well as elevations of the system, because as the garage gets poured up, it replaces the bracing function of the steel members. And then after that, we're racing towards the sky, and this is where Dave's expertise as a project manager with high-rise comes to the fore, because he's talking to all the superintendents and project managers, putting together a master schedule and getting as much efficiency as we can out of that, because we're the high-rise group and this is what we do. And then after that point, the access to the laydown area is no longer a concern because you have a haul road going through the new garage, which will eventually serve the third parcel of land when it gets developed out, but right now it's just serving us. So the first of the lessons learned that we were going to toss out to you was sort of a mistake we made in the project interview, where our superintendent did a wonderful job of walking everybody through those 4 slides as well as the 20 others that are part of that sequence. And then sort of as an aside, talked about, yeah, we could leave out the concrete lid and use that as a pick area for the crane. And the Heinz technical experts were right there with us. And it was a good conversation for a couple of minutes, but then we realized when one of the very important members of the financial experts on the team spoke up and said, I'm sorry, guys, I have no idea what we're talking about right now. So that was sort of a setback in that we spent 5 minutes of our 60-minute interview talking about the time of a concrete lid. But it was also sort of a validation for us that the BIM modeling was trying to communicate clearly our intentions to everyone in the room, not just the specialists. So lesson learned when we went to support materials for the Kennedy board meeting after getting through the Heinz interview. It wasn't, Tom, can you produce 2D site logistics? Can you give us a 3D model? It's, Tom, can we do 4D? Which was wonderful for me because I didn't have to sell it. I didn't have to make a business case for it or beg to do it. It was just, Tom, can you do this? I said, yeah, okay, we sort of need it tomorrow. Okay, we can do that too. And what we put together was just taking the model that Papa George had put together, marrying it up to the schedule that David put together, and then doing this, very quick simulation of the project going up. And this was, a win not just for the project, but also for, the building group as well to make the case that this is useful. And now for all our pre-construction, outreach, we do not just the plain Jane logistics model, but also sort of that site entourage sequence that you saw, as well as the 4D validation model. What you're seeing here is typical high-rise construction. Concrete gores are on a slip form. They're going up before the decks. The purple line you're seeing there is the curtain wall being installed after the shoring gets kicked out. Yellow is interior finishes. You've got MEP rough-in in between, of course. And then the bottleneck is going to be that hoist on the right side where we can't turn over the units on level 4 until it's no longer needed on level 58. And then we're turning over units on the lower levels while still finishing the upper penthouse floors. And then if you're familiar with the geography of Chicago, that's Merchandise Mart there on the right. So, like I said, we didn't get there overnight. We got some skepticism at first. This is the quote from my senior superintendent of concrete construction for that first meeting. But we just kept working. I was like, okay, what do I need to change to improve this? And it's like, well, you need to do this, that, and the other. So I came back with a new image. I said, yeah, closer, but you're still not there. And then, over a series of several days, we eventually got to a point where, yeah, I think that'll work. So that was a victory. We also, left a lot of ideas out there on the cutting room floor about as far as sequencing cranes, location of cranes. Do we build a dock on the Chicago River and have materials barged in? And for me, just because, as Ron mentioned, my initial training is as an architect, going back to the drawing board over and over again, it wasn't a new idea for me. But I think it did sort of bother a lot of my project managers and superintendents because they're used to rework being a bad thing. And I said, no, this is how architects work. This is how we get to the good solution. We knock out all the bad solutions first. So that was sort of my contribution to the civil high-rise concrete expertise already in play. This idea that, okay, get everybody together, use drawings and models as visual confirmation, and then go through a period of rapid redraw. And that was sort of a nice dash of design thinking because we were about to start collaborating with a design team that's not just an expert in high-rise construction, but also makes very smart, intelligent use of their models.
All right, so in order to be a great problem solver, you need to understand your constraints and your exceptions. Now, Benjamin Crosby had a great presentation yesterday where you said, try not to use the word design intent, and use design requirements. The constraints is the design requirements, and the exceptions are, I guess, the design intent. So here's a few renders, or not renders, but they're actually taken from our BIM. Got the tower on the top right, that's our lower levels. There's 6 garage levels, and you'll see that large opening, that's the Hall Road, that's the future service tunnel for the south site. Up top, or on the bottom top of the tower, we have to coordinate the cooling towers with the structure and the screen and the BMU. With that garage levels, we had to access our garage levels through an existing PT garage that was 8'6" floor to floor, which is not ideal for coordinating MEP. Mid-level 40 140 mes. This is taken from our model as well, so there's a massing of the fire reservoir tank. Some design considerations, we have living units above exterior soffits. We have to think about drainage on the exterior terrace levels. Of course, residential concerns and wind with railings. Speaking about wind, RWDI did 3 studies for us: pedestrian wind study, cladding wind load study, and wind-induced structural responses. And all these provide information that helps determine different requirements with the cladding as well as pedestrian comforts on these terrace levels. And one example would be with the report, you determine what the uplift is on these terrace levels, and you take that to the landscape architect, and they would figure out the pavers that are available and the thicknesses that need to accommodate to counter the uplift. So we get the structural engineer involved as well, and that helps us determine what type of pavers to use. Moving down the tower to 3 and 3 mezzanine, we have an indoor pool. In the far right, you can sort of see the lift and slide doors that creates a large opening, and sort of the same design considerations we have to consider. We have louvers which exhaust, so you need 15-foot separation between operable vents because these are living spaces. Again, we have outdoor terraces, and you sort of see in the bottom there's a 2-story lobby space with a fireplace, all requiring mechanical as well. One thing I would like to mention is that before the general contractor gets involved, the architect is involved with over 30 different teams doing design meetings every week. So we are boots on the ground for almost a year before the general contractor gets involved. Weekly design meetings, intense, long-hour days, and the importance of the BIM manager. Initially, I was the BIM manager through concept design, schematic design, and then took on more responsibility, so more of a project manager role. But the BIM manager, which turned into Georgi Todorov from my office here, the BIM manager and project manager really need to have a tight connection. I would equate it to in basic training in the Army, we have these battle buddies, and they just look out for each other. And that's exactly the relationship it needs to be, because the BIM manager is so in-depth with modeling the systems and knowing really large clashes. And the project manager is the keeper of all information and design considerations with all these different 30-plus teams of designers, engineers, owner-developers, and consultants. One example that we were doing as well, just to get into the details, is thermal modeling. This is a section detail at the base of a panda door, and what we originally detailed was a long, skinny HSS, which was filled with insulation, sort of as a thermal break. But as Georgi had modeled this in our BIM software, we realized that this detail with the steel tube insulated, as compared to just having a simple concrete curb, there really wasn't that much of a thermal difference with energy escaping out of that detail. So we decided to get rid of that detail of the complex, finicky of waterproofing and all that, and just keep it simple, have a concrete curb. The image on the right is really just a difference at the head condition at the lift and slide panda door. There's another HSS that's the one on the bottom left is showing the energy loss if that was empty, and then the one on the right is filled with insulation, so you could totally see the difference there. Residential high-rise considerations. So residential, you need to provide type A units, and they have to be sprinkled throughout the vertical distribution randomly in Chicago, which makes every floor unique. Now, on top of that, there's also the importance of interiors, because interior decisions has impacts on MEP. Now, you'll see on the right corner, that's the tower, and there's 3 different colors, right? Initially, we had 3 different typical residential floor plans. The green is the lower typical floor, the red is the upper typical floor, and then we had penthouse units. There's 3 floors of that on top. Image right next to that in red is a section of the structural system. So you could see that there's these outrigger walls, and then the outrigger walls go away, and then they come back mid-level, and then above that, where we have our upper tier, the columns turn into gravity columns, which have more flexibility with the units. So with the structural system in consideration, it creates another level of sub-typical residential floors. You add into the mix of the subcontractors' work with the plumbing distribution floors on 4, 8, 9, 18, 19, 28, 29, and 39. All of those RCPs are unique as well. So you've just created an entire 60-story floor tower of unique floors on every level, which gets to be pretty difficult to manage.
So at this point, Ron's gone into what they call a 95% contract document set. And this is how I was greeted when I first went over to the office. It was Adam Levy, who's actually one of the better project architects I've ever worked with, and he's got a great sense of humor. But the reason I was over there at the Sanctum was to do our kickoff meeting and to do the early outreach. Ostensibly, it's just about coordinate systems and file transfers and how are we going to manage data transfers. But really, what we're trying to achieve, most importantly, with that first meeting, is to put aside this idea that architect and contractor are going to be adversaries, and it's not something that you can achieve just in that first day, but also to start, on the working relationship with, creating trust in one another's capabilities, mutual respect, and then sort of also at Dave's gospel as far as managing expectations for how we're going to move forward. Once you've got the working relationship down, I find that's really 50% of the work right there. The other 50%, of course, is all the technical mumbo jumbo that I get paid to do. What we're trying to do here is a data exchange map where we're explaining that sort of each rectangle is a container for information, usually a file, and how we're going to move information from the design team on the left through the coordinators out to our distribution platforms on the right. I don't really advocate for one software platform over another, but I do sort of advocate for planning. And what we had in this situation is that our building group is on an Autodesk stack, our civil group is on a Bentley stack, they're all on Windows. We're exchanging information with a design firm that's on a Mac operating system, as well as a Graphisoft stack. So lucky for us, they're used to exchanging models in generic formats with their design team already. So Yorgi Todorov, who's this mad genius over there who gets on the conference calls with the voice of Dracula, which I love, and has done a lot of smart things in the model to help us out, was able to figure out a way to filter that information out into 5 separate exports, along with the 2D backgrounds with all the notes and dimensions that we could then bring in on our side and use workset-based filters and visibility graphics at the Wahoo. For our subcontractors, some of them were inheriting 2D sets, so they had to model from the ground up anyway. Others decided to just inherit the design models, upgrade to the latest version, run with it. And still others decided, hey, let's model in our own software, get it over to you. And I said, that's great. I'll work with you. If you can work with me, let's find some way to exchange information. Because I'm used to that really on my own back end with our civil group sending me exports out from the Bentley stuff, which I didn't do a 3D transform. Our concrete group, it's a mix of Tekla and TurboCAD. And then just internally, as Ron said, I used to have to conjure models out of thin air for those 6 typical floor plans. Ron's doing exactly what I would do on a model, which is just model out on that one floor only, leave the rest blank. But as already stated, because of the way MEP works with duct tapering as you go up and down, plumbing on 10-floor loops, electrical got its own 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 rhythm up the building, we really actually do need unique backgrounds and unique sort of sign-off models at each level. So we just sort of export out each slice into an echo file, duplicate as needed, and then reference back in to create that sort of one big model with everything in it. And then that's what we use to export out our shop drawings and coordination drawings out to the distribution platforms. Come on. So with all that set up, the people equation, the tool equation, the rest of all the fun stuff we like to do, BDC actually gets really easy. And when you forget about something, just because everything scales in a tower, it does become really difficult, like our sign-off models, which are tiny little Frankensteins, as Ron mentioned. And this is something we want to do differently on the next job we work together. They sort of build out a typical ceiling plan, like the A266 sheet, which is the typical condition, and then you have local overrides on following sheets, like the plumbing distribution floors you're seeing here, which is going to be that teal section of ceiling that I had to sort of selectively hide and then reinsert, as well as additional information from RFI 223, which added these soffits to conceal the lines as they go out. So, as well as stuff that sort of only got marked up in annotation rather than the model, as far as these one-off little 2-foot soffit conditions. So it's something we definitely want to do better next time around. As Marty said, our coordination meetings are sort of unique in that we've got the owner there in the trailer with us for 4 hours, and then Ron's also there on the web conference call, always available to us. So that sort of creates an interesting meeting, because it's not just coordinators running through clashes. Sometimes it's an OAC meeting, talk about big picture, just like, when is the design set for the interiors package coming through? And sometimes it's a design assist meeting, because we're being asked to comment on how a Riverwalk elevator works. So MEP is really stepping up to provide solutions and advice there. So to support that sort of rapid decision-making, we sort of had to change our meeting around, where we're playing a game called Let's Try and Crash Tom's Laptop, which is a game we win sometimes, which is fun for everyone. But just to be able to show this information to everyone, as well as Ron, who's out there on the moon, as we're trying to bring him into this conference call. I run it like an NFL broadcast, where camera 1 sort of our document management software, 2, we're broadcasting out to Ron, 3 is coming to the meeting prepared, marking up all your emails with flags and categories. 4 is clash detection software. 5 is content management if I need to take a dimension or draw something up on the fly. 6 and 7 is our agenda and schedule through Office documents. 8 and 9 is going to be the ASI and RFI and submittal databases we have online, the PDF reader, of course, and then the file sharing service. Of course, I'm not really the only one with a crazy desktop at this point.
Yeah, not as many numbers as Tom, but on the moon, I have to reference my notes. I have the email ready at hand so I could contact my consultants, engineers for quick responses to design solutions. 3, we need our folder structure to reference all the files that we need. We have our BIM and our model actually there in the 3D window, some sketches, and also the web meeting.
And so the goal of that is not to drive ourselves crazy with 1,000 programs, but because we have all the key decision makers in the room together, we want to make a decision and stick by it and have all the relevant information available immediately to make that instantaneous decision. Most of our RFIs as a result are just confirming RFIs, where they start off as discussed in the BIM coordination meeting, please, yada, yada, yada. Again, and this is sort of stuff that you do in any coordination meeting, but it sort of gets ramped up when we've got Ron in a third location, which is constantly marking up for visual confirmation everything we're talking about, flagging things for follow-up as well. And just because as a high-rise group, Chicago's a great place for us to be, but I also have to support teams virtually in Sacramento or Des Moines or Dallas or wherever it is. So for us to be able to train ourselves in how to lead a meeting completely virtually, all these markups and the constant providing a visual confirmation, whatever we're talking about on the screen, try to have an image that matches so that Ron can follow along, or whatever subcontractors couldn't make it to the trailer that day. Also, we sort of organize the model in a way to quickly navigate from floor to floor. If we're talking about a problem with an exhaust duct going through structure, a light goes off about what we're doing on the 3rd floor mezzanine, we need to be able to sort of navigate there in 5 seconds or less. You don't want to stand there waiting for me to navigate 20 seconds. And that's how we run our clash reports as well, level by level, room by room, in sort of a location-based scheme rather than system versus system scheme. And then that sort of philosophy of just capturing everything and moving quickly between any issues sort of extends to the meeting agenda, where just because Ron's sort of a switchboard for a dozen consultants, I'm a switchboard for a dozen subcontractors, we exchange 100 or 200 emails every week. So how do you make sure that nothing gets dropped? And for me, it's just a simple tool like Word. There are better tools out there, but it's just this philosophy, both in the model and everything you do, to capture every discussion you have and quickly organize it. And again, it's sort of that repeat of that big table, all the stakeholders, visual confirmation, redrawing rapidly, which sort of went on steroids when we got the PT guys involved, because these are 8-inch concrete slabs with post-tension steel cables running through them. Looks innocent enough when you look at the dashed line in the structural drawings, but when you actually see the notes for the 14 tenons equally spaced, we realized we had a potential coordination issue. So we took this philosophy that would work for the coordination team and expanded out to the owner, architect, contractor coalition. We realized we needed to take the lead with an even bigger group of people. Because of the design assist contract structure, we were months ahead of the PT guys, so our self-performed concrete team, they stepped up with a preliminary single line drawing of what they thought the layout would be. I converted to a model. We used that to run clashes, and of course the slab lit up like a Christmas tree, but we started working through it by inviting the concrete team as well as our MEP guys, and everybody you see here on a tab on the right is someone who got involved at one point. Heinz, because as much as our MEP guys are doing acrobatics inside the walls, eventually a partition did have to be moved. So Heinz is involved because rentable square feet is changing. Design architect and architect of record are on board for design aesthetics as well as code issues with the ADA units. Engineers of record also contributing because we're changing their designs. And then also reaching out to both the current wall team, because as you saw during the wind study, this is a huge wind tunnel that we're building inside of. So they don't have a lot of flexibility with those dark green embeds along the perimeter of this slab, but also that sort of constrains where the PT can anchor off. And then also, just because we have random zones of rebar, our rod busters are involved, and why not? Let's just talk about crane logistics, and we're going to pin through the slab at this. So you're looking at version 5 of this drawing, but we did eventually manage to get through it all. And at the end, this is a quote from one of our foremen who managed the ironworkers for the actual PT work on the slab, because he'd very graciously come over to our office or our trailer for the first 4 meetings, and the fifth meeting was to sign off. And he said, yeah, we can take care of all these 3 problems. Turned around to his assistant manager, and this was the quote I got, which is what I'm going to call a win for VDC, because he was very supportive of what we were doing, because when it comes time to actually construct this, and it's been raining for days, or maybe the Chicago River is frozen over, he wanted to, the comments to know that we'd worked it all out before we went out there. And that's really why I think Wolf Point has been great for the building group as a whole, is because it's touched so many people, from pre-construction through coordinator, management positions, but also the field. And as a result, all of our projects after this, as we're trying to turn this big ship, have gotten a lot easier to carry through. So with sort of the coordination bit behind us, we sort of want to end the presentation with a post-mortem, looking at things that we thought went well, things that we wanted to do differently next time, as well as stuff that we thought we should never, ever do again. And so I thought I'd sort of cue this up with quoting you, Marty. This was a few months ago when we were walking to the office. I was afraid you were going to jinx the project. I think as the owner, you've got one of the more important opinions, and also Dave, you as an outside observer. So Marty, would you still stand by this a few months later?
Still going well.
What would you think went really well? Or anything you'd want to change later?
Oh, yeah.
Tom, we talked about this a lot, and I think, I don't know if it's strictly luck or not, but we've got a heck of a team. It started, between owner and architect, and then once we got the GC on board, but then once we got into the coordination sessions, I'm actually quite surprised at the level of desire to do a fantastic job. I think the fire protection guys and the mechanical guys that we have working in the process that we're trying to accomplish here, they want to do such a great job, and I think that's a great benefit to this project. We've got the right people. I'm not sure how we got them.
Yeah. I also think that, it's kind of a repeat term we've heard, but, setting expectations early, good planning. Tom's like a super planner. So he really kind of pushed us along initially, really got me up to speed at how these systems work, but really getting everyone on board excited for the job. I mean, it's one of the biggest projects in the country, and especially in Chicago. It's big time. So everyone was on board, everyone was excited, and just making sure you got the right guys and made sure they understand what the task at hand was.
For you, Ron, anything you'd do different?
Did well. I would like to say that Tom, with his BIM coordination meetings, are incredible. He's so organized, and the agenda is just like rapid fire. Let's solve these problems right away. It's really incredible. Do differently, I would definitely have some more accountability with this design assist approach, because the MEP engineers, what they delivered to the subs, there's just too many holes, and I give so much credit to the MEP FP subs that took on this challenge, because they were really given an incredible challenge that they've worked out, so they've done an incredible job.
I think that went back to Dave's comment about design assist, and maybe it wasn't defined well enough. We, as the owner, knew we wanted an engineer that was going to get us to a permit process so that we could get this project started, and that the subs were going to have to take it from there. It was just take it from where, how much am I changing, how much assist is there to the design assist process, and sometimes there was more than I think we expected. And so yes, I got to give them credit that I think we've worked together well with the subs, and sometimes it costs money and sometimes it doesn't, but it's going well.
All right. So before we ended the presentation, we did want to toss this slide up here because even though it is Ron, Dave, and Marty and I taking the victory lap, getting all the credit, like I said, we got a big ship with a lot of captains. We also have a very large crew, and everyone on this slide contributed in one way, shape, form, or another to the success of the job. So we want to make sure that they got at least some credit for all the hard work that they've been doing. Because as everyone's already said, that the team has really been what's made the project great. There hasn't been a lot of whining, complaining, or feel sorry for me on this job, even though a lot of times there might have been justification for it. Everybody, shows up every day, knocks out problems one by one, and is worried not just about the success of their own company, but also the success of the project. And as much as you try to lead by example, I think, we are incredibly fortunate with the way that attitude just grew up organically with everyone on the team. And that's sort of why we wanted to bring it to BIMForum, because we wanted to show you something that we thought went really well. And if you're in a situation like us, where I think everybody on the stage would say we're sort of working for conservative companies with change, which are a mix of technology enthusiasts, technology skeptics, how do you start to change things and do a smart turn of that very large ship? We wanted to share a bunch of tools and techniques that we thought did work well on a project, and then help at least our building group do a lot better job on all the projects that followed. And then also just sort of the general call to action for everybody else is also your thoughts on what you thought you saw here went well, what you think we should do differently, and what you think we should never, ever do again, because we would love to have your input and your feedback. That's why we're here. We want to stop, we don't want Wolf Point to be an isolated example of something really great we did. We want all our projects to be this good as we move forward. So with that, I want to thank everyone for showing up today. I know it could be anywhere you chose to spend 40 minutes with us. Very appreciative. So thank you.